It has been more than half a century since astronaut Neil Armstrong took humanity's first historic step on the moon. And once again, the dream of space exploration is heating up. This time, humanity's goal is to set foot on Mars, and even to migrate there. To you, this may no longer feel like something too far-fetched, right? This is a project to settle humans on the red planet, driven by the ambition of billionaire Elon Musk. But is this truly feasible? According to common human understanding, life only exists on Earth. If Mars had nothing special, then even someone like Elon Musk wouldn't easily propose such a bold plan, would he? Colonization would be a monumental event, far more significant than just landing on Mars. And yet, up until now, humans haven't even set foot there. What about you? What kind of planet do you think Mars is? Could there be some kind of karmic or ancient connection between Mars and Earth? First, let's take a look at this red neighboring planet in our solar system. In the northeastern quadrant of Mars's western hemisphere, there lies a vast area covering approximately 4.9 million square kilometers. Geologists at NASA refer to this region as Acidalia planitia. From a distance, it resembles a massive burn mark. Scientists are intrigued. Why does this area look so different from the rest of Mars? Is there something mysterious hidden here? Today, let's talk about the red planet, Mars, and its possible karmic connection with Earth. In the early 20th century, NASA began taking action. After launching probes to Mars, the data they received left scientists stunned. One shocking discovery was the extremely high levels of two elements, uranium and thorium, both radioactive and excellent nuclear fuel sources. On Earth, these elements are typically found deep underground in mineral deposits. But in Martian rock, the natural concentrations of uranium and thorium are incredibly low. Theoretically, a probe shouldn't be able to detect them this easily. So how could it possibly be detected now? There's only one logical explanation. These two elements aren't buried deep underground. They're present right on the surface of Mars. This situation is reminiscent of a nuclear leak that occurred at a Soviet-era power plant back in the 1980s. That plant had 4 nuclear reactors, and one of them exploded. Radioactive isotopes such as uranium-235, cesium-137, and strontium-90 were released into the surrounding environment, contaminating the land and turning it into a hazardous zone. Even today, 40 years after the incident, people can visit the area and still measure the radiation levels. In fact, with just a small handheld detector, you can easily identify radiation levels that far exceed safety standards, no matter where you check around the site. The situation at Acidalia planitia on Mars seems eerily similar. When an American probe entered the region, simply turning on the equipment was enough to detect uranium and thorium levels well above the acceptable range. Physicist Dr. John Brandenburg once proposed a bold hypothesis in his book Life and Death on Mars. He suggested that Mars had experienced a nuclear war in the distant past. This catastrophe, he said, destroyed the planet's atmosphere, allowing solar wind and ultraviolet rays to sweep across the surface and turn Mars into a dead world. Dr. Brandenburg's book was published in 2011. However, even before that, someone else had proposed a similar idea. A Russian boy named Boriska claimed that he had lived a past life on Mars. He made this claim at the age of just 11, shocking the world. And from that moment on, people called him the boy from Mars. Boriska said that Martians were over 2 meters tall and had immortal bodies. They stopped aging once they reached the age of 35. They didn't breathe oxygen like humans, but instead inhaled carbon dioxide, CO2. According to him, Mars lost its atmosphere after a massive disaster, the result of a nuclear war. So what is the background of this boy from Mars? Boriska was born in 1996 in the Volgograd city, Russia. According to his mother, even from birth, his gaze was unusual. Normally, newborns can't focus their eyes, but Boriska, immediately after being born, stared straight into her eyes, which left her stunned. At just a few months old, Boriska could already speak. By the age of 1.5, he could read and draw. By age 3, he was discussing the solar system. He not only knew the names and designations of each planet, but also the number and features of their corresponding moons. A professor from the Russian Academy of Sciences, Lugovenko, became fascinated by this extraordinary child. He brought Boriska in for research and observation. At only 5 years old, Boriska began talking about the double helix structure of DNA, the layout of solar systems, and the names of galaxies that the professor himself had never even heard of. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you won't miss the next exciting adventures. Professor Lugovenko was so stunned, he was left speechless. He used a device to measure the bioluminescence, the light emitted from the boy's body, and found it was far stronger than that of an average human. Furthermore, the boy possessed an unusually powerful telepathic ability, seemingly beyond normal human capacity. What was even more astonishing was that the boy was speaking in a strange language, one that resembled the language of Martians. The professor, along with others present, couldn't help but wonder, could what this boy is saying actually be true? Did life really once exist on Mars? Since the 1960s, humans have launched more than 10 unmanned spacecraft to Mars. Thanks to these missions, we now have a basic understanding of the planet. From what we can observe on its surface, Mars is covered with rocks and sand. It is a dry and frigid world. Temperatures can drop to as low as -133 degrees Celsius, and in the summer rise to around 30 degrees. Mars's thin atmosphere cannot block ultraviolet rays or cosmic radiation. Combined with its extremely low air pressure, no Earth-based organism could survive in such an environment. So for most of the last century, saying that there was life on Mars was considered pure science fiction. Within the scientific community, anyone who proposed such an idea would likely be met with ridicule. However, things started to shift toward the end of the 20th century. In August 1996, at NASA's headquarters in Washington, D.C., journalists and photographers from across the country gathered in anticipation. All eyes were fixed on a small box. What did it contain? Just an ordinary-looking rock. Nothing visually remarkable, but it came from Mars. This rock is believed to have resided on the Martian surface for approximately 4.5 billion years. It's theorized that around 16 million years ago, it was unexpectedly ejected into space. How exactly is still unknown. The rock then drifted through the solar system until about 13,000 years ago, when it cut through Earth's atmosphere, turned into a meteor, and landed in Antarctica. After lying undisturbed for over 10,000 years, in 1984, a geologist finally discovered the rock. This event greatly excited scholars, as throughout the previous century, humans had launched countless probes to Mars, but had never retrieved any physical evidence from the red planet. All we had were photos sent back by machines. We had never actually touched any object from Mars. This lucky find was considered a treasure fallen from the sky. Scientists finally had a real Martian sample in their hands, so their excitement was completely understandable. As a result, they devoted their full expertise to analyzing the meteorite fragment. To their astonishment, they discovered that it contained magnetic iron oxide crystals, also known as magnetite. In 2011, a research team from the University of Nevada, USA, found that these magnetite crystals could be produced by bacteria, a type of single-celled microorganism. What's remarkable is that this type of bacteria had also been found in Earth's water sources. This astonishing discovery was later published in Science magazine in 2011. Not only were mineral crystals found, but scientists also discovered spherical chain-like structures within the meteorite fragment. Interestingly, similar chain structures have been identified in ancient fossils on Earth. According to paleontologists, such chains found in Earth's fossils were formed by bacteria. So now that we've found similar chains in a meteorite from Mars, could this be evidence of bacterial life that once existed on the Red Planet? David McKay, a senior astrobiologist at NASA's Johnson Space Center, stated that these two pieces of evidence were solid as a rock, absolutely irrefutable. He declared, "Life once existed on ancient Mars." The scientific community was immediately shaken. After the initial shock, heated debates began to erupt. The scientific community split into two camps. One side supported the idea that there was indeed solid evidence proving that life once existed on Mars. The other side argued that the current evidence was far from sufficient to draw any firm conclusion. Neither side could convince the other, making the search for concrete proof an urgent priority. This is also one of the reasons why many nations, fearing they would fall behind, rushed to launch Mars exploration missions. If life truly existed on Mars, it means that human colonization of the Red Planet in the future is entirely possible. And in that case, whoever arrives first will have the advantage of early development. At the very least, they will secure the right to study Mars ahead of others. The most recent example was in July 2020, when the United States, China, and the United Arab Emirates all launched Mars exploration missions. There was good reason why all sides acted around the same time. It was because Mars had just reached its closest point to Earth. If this opportunity was missed, they would have to wait another 26 months for the next chance. NASA's Perseverance rover landed at Jezero crater in the northern hemisphere of Mars. 3 months later, China's Zhurong rover also landed on a nearby plain close to the crater. What makes Jezero crater so special that nations are flocking there? intentionally provides indirect support to the theory of ancient nuclear explosions on Mars. In several ancient civilizations of humanity, Mars in esoteric teachings and mythology shows a surprisingly consistent theme. It is associated with war and death. In ancient Chinese metaphysics, Mars was referred to as Huyan Hoak, symbolizing war and destruction. In the Vedic astrology of ancient India, Mars was known as a malefic star, representing a wrathful god. In Norse mythology, Mars corresponds to the god of war and courage, Tyr. Later, in the Norse apocalyptic sagas, Tyr battled the underworld demon Garmur, and both were annihilated, hinting at a catastrophic fate for Mars. In Greek mythology, Mars was represented by the god Ares, and in later Roman mythology, Ares was renamed Mars. The modern name Mars in English originates from the Latin word. The ancient Romans believed themselves to be descendants of the god of war, Mars, which is why their military power was so formidable. The Roman army was once the most powerful force on Earth before the medieval period. Literally and culturally, the Romans considered themselves the descendants of Mars, essentially heirs of the planet Mars. Today's story, from the boy from Mars to the ancient myths of various civilizations, and the discovery of evidence suggesting life once existed on Mars before being wiped out in a catastrophe, unfolds a sci-fi narrative spanning time and space. Mars was once teeming with life and home to a highly advanced civilization. However, a sudden nuclear war erased everything, turning Mars into a dead red planet. A small number of survivors escaped to Earth. Among them, at least a portion of Martians integrated into humanity. Yet, within their collective subconscious, the memory of that ancient cataclysm remained. Thus, in the myths they passed down, Mars is consistently associated with war and destruction. Some individuals, through their reincarnation on Earth, retained fragments of these distant memories, leading to cases like the boy from Mars. Earth may already have a portion of its people who originated from Mars, and from a certain perspective, one could say that Mars was the previous era of Earth, while Earth now is the Mars of a new cycle. Suppose Earth one day faces a nuclear war and is ultimately destroyed. Then from afar, it too may look like the red planet, Mars version 2. Of course, everything above is simply the narrative thread of a fictional story. As for how to interpret it, everyone is encouraged to consider it rationally. And our story for today comes to an end here. Wasn't today's time-traveling tale about Mars fascinating? Even though it may sound far-fetched or unbelievable, don't you find it oddly logical? Feel free to share your thoughts and theories about the red planet, Mars, in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to share it with a friend. Thank you all so much. See you next time.